You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Before we get started, remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe to get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Joining me on today's cricket discussion is a former professional cricketer who played for Middlesex County Cricket Club between 2010 and 2012. Once his professional career ended, he returned to Perth, Western Australia, to set up cricket mentoring in August 2016, mentoring and helping cricketers from all over the world become the best they can be on and off the field. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Tom Scollay. Skulls, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Skulls. Great to talk to you about cricket. And this discussion today, we're going to be talking about your career and some other topics that I've chosen to discuss. So let's get into it. Let's go back to the very beginning, Skulls, back to where it all started, growing up in Alice Springs. What were your memories growing up in Alice Springs and playing cricket?
Yeah, well, so you're 100% right. I was born in Alice, but when I was 4 years old, I moved to Canberra. And one of my first memories is being at our house in Canberra and getting a cricket set for Christmas, one of those old sets that has the stumps, the ball and the bat in it. And I remember I think I got the ball, I've got a twin brother, he got the bat, and my first ball, I bowled him. And that was a real buzz and that was a real good feeling. And then that was probably when I was 7 or 8. My brother and I started playing soccer when we were 6. That was our first sport. We played a bit of tennis as well. And I think the cricket set must have come at 7 or 8. And then my first competitive, when I first started playing cricket properly was in Canberra when I was 10, just before we moved back to Alice. And my best friend at the time from primary school, he was playing cricket, and I used to stay at his house on a Friday night, bring my white clothes, and I'd sort of pack them in the bag, and I fielded for them a few times. And then after a few weeks, my parents sort of caught on to what was happening, and they said, "Do you want to play cricket?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to play. I'm enjoying it." And then I played the second half of the season, and a fond memory I've got is I hit my first ever ball for 4. I think I got a juicy full toss and I smoked it over mid-wicket. And I think I was addicted ever since then. And then, after that season ended, I think I won the batting average for the club, even though I only played half the season. Moved back to Alice, joined a club, and cricket's been my life pretty much ever since.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think that's how we all started in the game. That's how I started in the backyard. I played it in school, and I've been hooked ever since. So you get that real buzz from it, and it's just infectious, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's something so unique about it, where it's a team game and you spend so much time with your teammates, but it's also an individual contest. And so, you get to stand out at times when you're going well, and when you've got the ball, when you're batting, it's all on you. So it's really individual, but then you've got that camaraderie of your team. So I think it's a beautiful sport.
Absolutely. It's the greatest game on earth. Now, Skulls, when you made the decision to leave Alice to go to Perth, you just finished school, you said goodbye to the family, you went over to Perth to pursue your dream in becoming a professional cricketer. You got into university, but you gave that degree up, you deferred it. And you played in Perth and Darwin for around about 9 years, if I'm right, on and off.
Yep. So you're very correct that I played all year round for 9 years, but the first 2 years out of school, I went Perth, Darwin, because the seasons are sort of opposite. And then the third year I started going to England, and I had 6 years in England. Yeah. So all year round for, about 9 years. And it was Perth, Darwin, Perth, England. I was just, couldn't get enough of it.
What was that experience like, doing that, playing in Perth, Darwin, and doing that?
Oh, it was awesome. I had sort of not a care in the world except for trying to get better and score as many runs as I could, and just having fun as well. There was far less responsibility than there are these days, being sort of a bit older and having a family and having a business and those sort of things. So it was a fantastic time in life where I just was training hard, I was playing hard, I was enjoying myself, and probably enjoying myself too much off the field at times. Being a young guy. But I got to sort of make friends all over the country and then all over the world. And just to be doing something I loved. And I'm so lucky looking back that my parents were incredibly supportive. They could have really pushed me into university and told me to be more sensible. But they realised I was quite good, but most importantly, I enjoyed it, and I was really passionate about cricket and sort of pursuing it. And so it was awesome, mate. And I look back on that time in my life, and it feels like a long time ago, especially playing up in Darwin. I haven't been back there very much since my last time in 2007. But yeah, it was such a good time. I got some very fond memories of all of it.
Absolutely. You talked about going to England, and you went to play in the leagues there for a bit. So after playing in Perth, Darwin, on and off for around about 9 years or so, you decided to head over to England to further your opportunities, learn and develop life skills. What was that experience like playing in the leagues in England? And how does league cricket in England compare to Premier grade cricket here in Australia?
Oh, it was such a good learning for me, both as a person and as a cricketer. The biggest, there's so many differences on the cricket field. The conditions in terms of the weather, the wickets are really, really different. The balls are really, really different. How the balls behave are very different. And then the format of the game, there was what's called a winning and a losing draw in league cricket over there. And I couldn't get my head around that you'd play for a winning draw rather than to try and actually win the game. So, so many differences. And going to England as a 20-year-old really helped develop my skill set, but also my understanding of the game and my mindset. And they're the three sort of main characteristics of being successful, I think, is those three things combined. And playing in England was such a learning curve. And then off the field, I had to deal with being the overseas player and the player that was getting sort of, that was brought over by the club to be the one that the best player, let's say. And there was a lot of pressure that came with that for a young guy. So that was a really good learning experience. I had to, even though I'd been living out of home for a couple of years, as the rain comes down, hopefully it's not too loud behind me, but I had to, it's quite fitting. We're talking about England, it starts raining. I had to.
The weather in England, shocking.
Exactly. You have to get used to the rain and when you're playing cricket in England. But yeah, just so many positives. Learning to adjust to the pace of the wickets and the little slow bowlers who are so skillful in those conditions. And it really did expand my game. It challenged me. And it challenged my resilience. I think to be a successful cricketer over a long period of time, you have to become incredibly resilient. You have to learn to bounce back from setbacks and not sort of be too down on yourself, because it's hard to get out of it when you're too down on yourself. So yeah, some absolutely fantastic cricket lessons, but probably more importantly, I think it really helped me develop as a person, helped me grow up and mature and see some of the world as well, helped me live. Like I was talking to a parent of a really good young cricketer today who's just turned 16, and we were saying how quick time goes. And it's like, those experiences are some of the best experiences of my life. And I'm turning 34 in a couple of months. So I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore. And yeah, you sort of only get one life, and having the opportunity through cricket to spend so much time in the UK, in London, in one of the biggest, best cities in the world, was just something I'm so grateful for and so pleased and proud to have done.
Absolutely. So then you found yourself playing for Middlesex. So after playing some league cricket, learning and developing your skills on and off the field, you played for Middlesex. Tell us, how did you come across playing for Middlesex?
Yeah, well, it was quite interesting. So my father was born in England, and he left the UK when he was quite young, but he's eligible for a British passport. And because of his heritage being English, I was eligible for a British passport. And a friend of mine, when I was 19, said, and I think I was heading back to Darwin, or I just got back from Darwin for the second year, said, mate, Scholes, you got to go to England, man. And then I said, yeah, my dad's born there. And then it turned out I didn't have a British passport. My dad didn't have a British passport at the time, but we both got one. And my dad got his, then I got mine. And it meant that I was eligible to play cricket professionally as a local. I'm a British citizen. So when I went over there, my goal and dreams were always to play for Australia, and to get there, I wanted to play for Western Australia. However, things weren't happening for me in Perth. I wasn't scoring the runs I needed to get noticed and get selected and break into the squad. And so England became another option. And in the first couple of years of league cricket, 2008, 2009, I did quite well. I did quite well in Premier League cricket in the Middlesex League. And I had a teammate who was part of the Middlesex coaching staff, and he said, I'll get you a trial with Middlesex. And it took some time. I sort of was hoping to have got, at the time I was a bit frustrated that I didn't get a trial sooner, but everything happens for a reason, I believe. And I got a trial at the very end of the season. First game I played for Middlesex second 11 against Gloucestershire, and I opened the batting and I hit 66 off 33 balls. And all of a sudden Middlesex were really interested, and they invited me to come back for 2010 pre-season. I came back to England a month earlier than I would normally, just to play league cricket. I started the county season playing second 11 as an uncontracted player. I think I was the only uncontracted player. I was batting in the top order. They were giving me a really good opportunity in the second team, and I did quite well. And then come July, on the back of my performances in second 11, and I actually said to them that another county was interested in me trialling, and then they offered me a sort of a 2.5 year contract for the remainder of that season plus two more seasons. So it was a bit of a slog to get there. In the meantime, I was going back to Perth and trying to do well in grade cricket, but it just wasn't happening for me. So I was 22 when I got offered my contract, and had 2.5 amazing seasons. Unfortunately, I didn't score the runs to keep sort of my contract and to keep me in the squad. And so at the end of my first contract, that 3 years, I got released. But it was a really amazing time, and to say and to have those experiences, to have played at Lords, to have called Lords my home ground for a while, and to have played with against some of the world's best players is just, something I'm really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. You talk about playing at Lords. You made your debut there. What was that like? You've written about your debut in detail, how you were feeling and that. But what are your memories from that day?
Oh, look, it was a very, very special day. Something I remember vividly is the lead up to that moment, because that was when I got my contract. It was an incredible sort of 4 or 5 days. I was trying to replay the dates in my head recently, when it was 11 years since I made my debut. And I did a post about that back in early July, a couple of months ago. And I think I said to Middlesex, I'm going to go and trial at Hampshire. And they said, oh, look, we want the coach at the time, second team coach, Richard Johnson, said, look, I want to try and sign you. Just play one more game for us. I'm going to try and sign you. In that game, I got 180 against Gloucestershire. And then at the end of that day's play, which I think was a Wednesday, I got offered my contract. And Angus Fraser, who was the director of cricket and still has been at Middlesex up until recently, said, congratulations, Tom, here's your contract, and you're in the squad to play against Bangladesh at Lords on Sunday. And that was Wednesday night. And then, a couple of days passed. I sort of celebrated with my mates on the Thursday and some of my teammates. And then I played club cricket on the Saturday. And then the Sunday was the debut at Lords. And as I've written about, which you mentioned, I couldn't sleep the night before. My mind was so active. I couldn't switch off. I didn't know how to calm myself down and trust myself. And I've got very little sleep. But just rocking up the next day, training, warming up on Lords on the outfield. Bangladesh, the international team, are there. Playing against them, I know that they batted first. They batted really well. They've got some fantastic players. And then I batted number 5. As I was waiting to bat, we lost 2 early wickets. Then there was a bit of a partnership between David Milan and Owe Shah. Obviously, Milan's in the England Test team at the moment. Owe Shah played a lot for England, and I was sort of sitting on the balcony, like trying not to fall asleep because I was so tired and so exhausted. And then the wicket fell. I was absolutely fine. I got my adrenaline going. Walking through the long room was an amazing feeling. Getting my first run, a little tuck to square leg. I think it was off Shakib Al Hassan. And then I didn't last very long. I only got 3 and got out slog sweeping the spinner. But it was an incredible day. I remember being absolutely exhausted at the end of it. Like emotionally, I was just wrecked. Such a big thing where my adrenaline was going all day. And then I obviously hadn't had much sleep. But it was a really, really special sort of 4 or 5 days there.
Absolutely. You talk about Angus Fraser, former England fast bowler, and he was very good. He told you the news that your services are not going to be required at Middlesex. You said, I was able to accept that news and be okay with it. Did you ever have the idea of trying to get into another county team, or was it trying to go back to Perth to get into the WA side?
No, great question, mate. I love how prepared you are. No, it was also basically the timings of it was in between my second and third year of my contract with Middlesex. So at the end of the 2011 season. So I got my contract middle of 2010, finished that season with Middlesex. I came back, played a little bit in Perth in between the season, went back to England 2011, didn't score many runs there, had a tough year, came back to Perth. And in that Perth grade season, I scored the most runs in the WACA competition. I got 819 runs at 81. And I played a second 11 game for WA at the end of that season. Then I went back to Middlesex for my final year of my contract. And then at the end of that season, Angus delivered the news that I wasn't required. So my now wife was my girlfriend at the time. We were living in London together. She had a job in London, and we sort of decided, and I sort of, having lived in London and loved the London lifestyle and also loved Perth, I didn't really want to try and go and play or live in a smaller county, Leicestershire or Derbyshire or somewhere like that. But I also had this opportunity to come back to Perth and play for Western Australia, which was my dream and my goal all along. And because I'd played a second 11 game at the end of the season, I was the best batter in the comp that previous season. I was really confident that I could come back to Perth, and if I scored enough runs, I'd get an opportunity here. And so, to be honest, I've written about it and said that I was okay with when Angus delivered that news. And if I didn't have Western Australia as the backup plan, I think I would have been much more difficult to take that information and being told I'm no longer required. And I might have looked at another county and sort of tried to battle away in county cricket for longer. But I really backed myself here to come back to WA and forge a career here. And unfortunately, I just didn't score enough runs. And as any batter knows, runs is our currency. And so, yeah, and that's how it panned out. I continued to chase my dreams here in Perth. I did go back to England, had one more season. I played in the Surrey Premier League for a season, but then that was my time in England done for a while, and my wife moved over here, and I chased my cricket in Perth for another few years before I started to move into cricket mentoring.
Yeah, so you returned to Perth, as you said, after losing your contract. Didn't happen, unfortunately. When you reflect on your professional career, I should say, despite it being short, what are you most proud of, and do you have any regrets?
Oh, mate, great questions again. I think regrets, I don't have any regrets because I was only trying my best at the time. I always tried my best, and I could only do what I knew. Like, if I knew then what I know now, I think my career could have been very different. And that's why I'm very passionate about what I do with cricket mentoring. I'm trying to be the mentor I wish I had. But at the time, I didn't know any different. So I was just giving it my best. What I would do differently is I would really try and understand myself better. I would focus on the mental skills needed for performance. And yeah, not just hit balls and train hard, be as fit as I can, but try and look after my mind a bit better, because that's what let me down ultimately. That's what I wasn't able to manage and then wasn't able to perform at my best. So that's something I would do differently, but it's not a regret because it's just the way it was. And I think I'm just proud of my journey, just growing up in Alice Springs in a small town I don't know that many people, I don't think many people who have been born and raised in Alice have gone on to play professional cricket. There's a few that have lived in Alice who have done things, a few footy players, but to come from a small town at Alice, move to Western Australia, move to London, continue to chase my dreams and my passion. I'm just proud of the fact that I actually did it. And I think, to be honest, a part of me relaxed once I got my contract and became a professional cricketer. I sort of was really proud of that. And I didn't then have a goal to be the best and and I didn't have a goal to play for England, which was the next step. So yeah, and I'm proud of some of the innings I played, some of the innings in the second 11. I didn't sort of have many innings of note in the first team. I only played a handful of games across my career, but in the second team, I played a few good innings, a few match-winning innings, and I was also proud of the fact that I was the second team captain for a while, which was probably not a great thing because I was spending a lot of time in the second team, not the first team. But yeah, there's many things I'm proud of, but I'm also proud of how I conducted myself and the friendships I forged. I've got a few of my closest friends from my time at Middlesex, and yeah, no regrets really.
Well, that's brilliant. So we now come to the latest chapter in your journey, cricket mentoring. So after your professional career ended, you decided to go into cricket mentoring, start that up, coaching, mentoring. Skulls, did you always wanted to go into coaching and start a business after playing?
No, not at all, mate. Not at all. So the timeline, as I'll sort of have alluded to, I lost my contract with Middlesex September 2012. I came back to Perth with the ambition to play professionally for Western Australia. I started a uni degree in November of that year, an online uni degree, started studying economics. That was something I enjoyed at school and I found interesting. However, after about 6 months, I think I changed to accounting. I think it was about 6 months. I changed to accounting because the economics was about writing and accounting was about numbers. And I enjoyed numbers far more than writing. And in the meantime, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was spending a lot of time researching and success and successful people and online business and social media and these sort of things that were sort of not as prominent now as not as prominent as they are now back in 2012, 2013. And then it was July 2014 when I didn't go back to England for the first time in 6 years, or 7 years maybe. I can't remember it, to be honest, but 6 or 7 years I'd had in England, and this was my first winter in Australia as an adult. And so I sort of said to my mate who owns a cricket shop here and has some nets at the cricket shop, I just said, I'm keen to get some coaching. Can you get me any cricket coaching? And that's sort of where it started. I just did it for a bit of extra income at the start. And then after the first session, during the first session, I got this buzz, this excitement of helping a young kid get better. And then I had another person call, help that person, another person. And that was July 2014. And then I founded my business in January 2016 and I launched it in August 2016. So it wasn't something that I sort of set out to do. It just sort of happened through just doing a little bit of coaching, enjoying it, and it growing organically, earning a little bit of extra income on the back of working full time. And then got to a point where once I launched Cricket Mentoring and we started getting some traction and people started to resonate with our messaging and what we were talking about, it just took off from there. And then I just really have loved every moment of it since, and the journey of trying to grow it and build a business and build a lifestyle and help young cricketers, because my big passion is I see myself in these young cricketers who are aspiring to be the best they can be and play at a high level. And I'm, as I have said many, many times, I'm always trying to be the mentor I wish I had, because I think if I had someone to talk to, someone to sort of guide me, then I probably, I feel like I could have had a more successful career myself.
Absolutely. Cricket Mentoring celebrated its 5th birthday recently. Where do you see cricket mentoring in the next 5 years?
Great question, mate. Look, hopefully continuing to grow globally. Hopefully we continue to help cricketers all over the world of all levels. That's something that we're about, is if you're keen and you're committed and you're serious about your cricket, then it doesn't matter if you're 7 or you're 21 and you never played before. We're able to give you high quality coaching and mentoring. So I'd like to be able to just continue to scale that and bring on more good quality coaches to help more athletes around the world. While we continue to, in 5 years, hopefully we've got many professional and international cricketers in our system and as part of our programs. We got some really exciting young players who are 16 and 17 at the moment, who I think could be international cricketers and have really successful careers if things keep progressing. So it'll hopefully be something similar to what we're doing now, where we're just creating a lot of content. We're trying to add lots of value, where we're coaching players in person, we're coaching players online, and hopefully the world's in a better place and we're able to travel, we're able to do tours again and travel around the world. That was a big part of what we did in the first few years and a big part of our plans, but obviously COVID over the last couple of years has slowed that right down. I want to be able to get back to India, get to South Africa, get to New Zealand and work with some of the athletes who follow us from these other parts of the world. So yeah, not a whole lot different, but obviously, yeah, just scale it, make it grow, reach more and more people, help the sort of the masses and have our community grow and have more and more young aspiring cricketers, and then keep developing coaches as well and keep challenging the norm. And what we try and do is ultimately is to try and help people live a better life, help people live their best life. And that's through cricket, but also through creating a mindset, creating a lifestyle and behaviors that allow them to live an epic life. So yeah, that's the plan, mate. Continue to do what we're doing, really.
Absolutely. Now that's the talking about yourself bit, young Skulls. let's get into this cricket discussion. I chose some topics to talk about and discuss.
Oh, awesome.
And there's some good topics. So let's start off with the first one, mental health in cricket and society. It's a big issue in cricket. A lot of cricketers have come out and said, I've suffered from mental illness, had some battles with my mind. But also everyone in this current situation is going through the same thing. People think mental health is a weakness. It's not a weakness. You're not weak. You shouldn't be ashamed to have a mental illness. It's an illness. You shouldn't be ashamed to have it. And in cricket, it's a big problem. It's growing quite rapidly. But we have to keep talking about this, Skulls. We can't keep sweeping it underneath the carpet and, oh, it'll be all right. We can't do that. We've got to start the conversation, especially in men, because of that stigma. You know, a man will not go and see a doctor for men's health. Will not say that I've got mental illness or mental health issues. So we need to break down that stigma as well.
Absolutely.
And we see more and more cricketers present and past coming out and said, I've suffered from mental health during my career. You talked to Will Bukowski on your podcast, Nicole Bolton as well, Kate Cross, they've come out. Ben Stokes just recently took a break from cricket. Cricket, Skulls, been an intense game with lots of pressure and expectations that these players have on their shoulders. Could that pressure and expectations that these players have, could that be the cause of cricketers suffering from mental illness, Skulls?
Oh, mate, absolutely. But as you just alluded to, it could be anything. It could be something that's happened in their childhood that they've suppressed for a long time that they haven't addressed, and it just pops its head up. I've got people close to me who have suffered from mental health for many years, and fortunately, it's not something I've been through myself. However, I know how challenging it is, and it is certainly, as you said, I couldn't agree with you more about. It's not something to be ashamed of. It ain't weak to speak. And it's a real thing that many people suffer with, and too many people do suffer in silence, and we do need to, as a collective, as a society, make it more acceptable to talk about it, and make it sort of people feel safe when they do open up about it. So look, in terms of cricketers, I think cricket is such a sort of a statistic-based game that you're sort of, you can't hide anywhere. If your cricket or your scores aren't going well, it can really get people down. And something that I'm talking a lot about at the moment with my athletes is this idea of detaching your identity from your results. And it's an idea I heard with a story with Ash Barty, the world #1 tennis player, Aussie lady. And she used to struggle with performances, and a lot of that was to do with her whole identity was tied up with being a tennis player. And if she didn't do well on the tennis court, she didn't value herself as a person. And that's a very sad and toxic mindset to be in. And she spent some time with a mindset coach, working on herself and working on her identity. She loves all these other things. She's an auntie. She loves her footy. She loves her coffee. So she's Ash Barty, and who plays tennis, not Ash Barty, the tennis player. And I think the more people that can detach their identity as a human being, and therefore their value as a human being, can detach it from their sport and from their performances, then they're less likely to get too down when things aren't going well. But if your whole value is tied up with how you go on the cricket field or any other sort of sporting field or court, well, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because we don't succeed. We fail more than we succeed, and we're going to have lots and lots of tough days and bad days. So that's something that I think I'm trying to work on with our young athletes, is to really detach themselves from that identity piece and say, like, you're Johnny, but who plays cricket, but you're also this, you like your footy, you like this. Like, there's more to you than just being a cricketer. And then, I think trying to understand and practice things like gratitude, and trying to detach yourself and understand what social media is. And there's all these little things and tricks. But we do live in a world where people are comparing themselves all the time. And so the more we can try and teach people that, like, when you're looking at someone, it's always their highlight reel. It's not their behind the scenes. It's always their good stuff, not their bad stuff. And everybody goes through bad stuff. I know so many people. I know so many instances where I know people are suffering behind closed doors, and then put up a post like something's amazing, and they're trying to get that love and that validation that they're secretly missing or craving. And so, yeah, I think it's a tough world we're in at times, but I think we've all got to support each other and as you say, open up and speak if we are struggling a bit.
Yeah, absolutely, Skulls. I knew someone from school, went to primary school and high school with him, and he sadly took his own life. No one knew he was suffering. And this is the thing, we got to speak out because many people are suffering. Yeah. And I look at these cricketers and I see them as people who are trying their best.
Yeah.
And just giving their best. But fans, they get frustrated because they don't do well. And, social media, that black hole, which is very dark, does play on players' minds. And you see a lot of players suffering from mental health. So I think cricket fans in general, we just need to remember that they're athletes, but they're trying their best. It's okay to fail. You're not going to succeed every time. The game of cricket is hard. It's not easy. Skulls,
Absolutely.
You've been there, you've done it. Ricky Ponting behind me and Shane Warne have done it. It's not easy.
Nah.
We just lose sight of that, I think. And it's very important to realize that they're human beings and we should see them as humans. And that's why we should, when we do something on social media, think about what the implications are.
Yeah. And I try and say to my athletes, you don't want to live on the roller coaster where you're really high when you're going well and really low when you're not. And that all comes back to that identity and valuing yourself as a person, really.
Absolutely. And I think we need more education on mental health as well. Cricket clubs around Australia as well. Cricket Australia doing that with the national teams as well. But I think we should do that at club cricket as well and start the conversation.
Yeah.
And there are various organizations that can help. We'll leave a link to that in the description below. Some very useful links: Beyond Blue, Headspace, Lifeline, the Resilience Project by Hugh Van Cuylenburg. I recommend reading his book. It's a very good book about resilience. Also, if you live in the UK, Samaritan's a good source there. Also, cricketing circles. Tom, you spoke to Mark from Opening Up. You did a video on that on your podcast. I'll leave a link to that in the description below as well. It's a great interview that Tom did. So it's very important. What we're trying to say is to talk to someone, your family, friends, your mate. Just talk to someone. And we need to all support each other in these tough times. So, Skulls, let's move on to the next topic. This one goes unnoticed in the game, I think you would agree, and many people don't work on it. It's the mental side of cricket. Cricket is 90% mental and 10% skill, played above the shoulders. Tom, why is that players ignore the mental side?
Oh, it's such a tough one. And this is what I was saying earlier about my own career. It's just something I wasn't aware of. And I think through what we're doing and now sports psychology is becoming far more prominent than when I was playing professionally 10, 11 years ago. But it's something that's not tangible. Whereas when you improve your cover drive, you can see the physical improvement. You can see that you hit the ball better. You can actually get the feeling and the reward straight away. Whereas the mental side of the game, you don't get the reward or the outcome straight away. And it's often really hard to notice unless you're being really aware and switched on. So I think it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to quantify. You can't say I'm mentally a lot better. Whereas you can say, technically I'm hitting the ball. I've opened up that part of the ground. I'm doing that. So it can be measured because, for example, I've got a coaching client at the moment who I'm working with who's in South Australia in your neck of the woods. And he is now able to deal with stress at work far better than he was 6 weeks ago. So we've been working on his mindset and his understanding of his thoughts and his mental skills. And so he can say, I'm handling pressure and stress way better. So that's quantifiable in some ways, but it's not as tangible or as noticeable as the physical side of things. So I think that it's improving, and hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, every single professional team will have sports psychologists because, as you said, like cricket especially is won or lost in the mind of an athlete and the mind of the team. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. And we talk about a lot at Cricket Mentoring just because I didn't know much about it when I was playing professionally. And I really think it would have made a big difference in my career. Absolutely,
Skulls. You've got to work on it. You can use it in everyday life, as you said. It works both ways. Let's talk about a few areas that you could work on with that involve the mental side. Routines are very important, Skulls, in the game. Players have their own routines that they follow pre-game, during the game, post-game. There's no set routine. No one does the same thing. It's all different. So Skulls, why is it important to have a good mental routine and a routine as well?
Well, a mental routine is basically used to focus your thoughts into what's relevant when you need it to be. So you don't want to be thinking about the scoreboard when the ball's being released from the bowler's hand, or you don't want to be thinking about what the opposition just said or who's watching when the ball's being bowled, because that's not relevant in that moment. So a mental routine sort of brings your attention and your thoughts into what's relevant. And if something that I love and I say to my players is something I got from the Cricket Australia sports psychologist Peter Clark, where he says there's a difference between a blank mind and a clear mind, and you should always be striving for a clear mind where you're just focused on what's relevant in that moment. But a blank mind allows you to just have any other thought come in, and that's what distracts you. And the distractions are what cause mistakes. It's when we can't then focus our attention on the present moment and therefore execute our skill to the best of our ability. So mental routines are just so important. And I sort of say to my athletes, like the most important skill any athlete can possess, and not just cricket, but cricket's very, very important in this, but the most important skill any athlete can possess is the ability to focus your attention on the present moment. Because the present moment is where your peak performance lives. It's where your optimal performance lives. And if you're not focused on the present moment, you're never going to perform at your best in that moment. You're more likely to make a bad decision and more likely to make an execution error as well. So it's a non-negotiable. If you want to perform at your best, you've got to be able to focus on the present moment. So a mental routine helps you do that. It doesn't mean you're definitely going to do it, because you might still get distracted, but it gives you something or a process to follow that hopefully gets you into that moment.
Absolutely. The next thing is mindset and attitude, two very important things. Let's talk about mindset first. Skulls, it's very important to have the right mindset. And you wrote an article about mindset, about fixed and growth mindset. So can you tell us, why is it important to have the right mindset, and what's the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset?
Well, a fixed mindset's where you basically think that you've been given a certain level of ability and you don't really have to work on it, or if you can't change it. So everything's fixed. It's like, oh, I'm talented, and you sort of, that's what lazy people do, and people who don't have the mindset of trying to get better all the time. Whereas a growth mindset sort of speaks for itself, where you're trying to always grow and become better and improve. So the best athletes are never satisfied with where they're at. They're always looking for ways to learn and improve. And so they've all got the growth mindset. They're all trying to get better. They don't just say, oh, that's me, I'm done. I'm averaging 40, I'm done. That's as good as I'll ever get, and I'm good enough to be. They were always tinkering and testing and trying things to get a little bit better. So I think that is hugely important for any young athlete to understand, that if you want to be the best you can be, it's never like, we never ever master the skill that we do, and we never ever master ourselves. So we're always trying to grow as a person and grow as an athlete and grow our skill set, because that is where we can get better. That's where we can reach our optimal. That's where we can really become successful and be the best we can possibly be.
Absolutely. So let's talk about attitude. Skulls, having the right attitude can make a difference in a game of cricket. What is attitude? Attitude is the state of mind which you approach a situation or look at the world. It's the part of what you bring into a match. It is demonstrated by how you act and react. It is how you feel to make others feel. Attitude is a choice. You can choose to be positive or negative. Attitude affects performance. Your attitude that you take onto the ground will have a significant impact on the quality of your performance, and certainly affect other people's perception of your performance. So attitude is internal and external. So internal attitude, how we think, how we feel, our mindset, this is the voice inside that can send positive messages and reinforce positive behaviors, or it can eat away at our confidence. This can be emotionally draining physically. And external attitude is the way we communicate the mindset to others. Our behavior is the personification of our attitude. So Skulls, how important is having the right attitude in cricket?
Oh, mate, attitude is everything, I think. And especially in young players, when a young player could have the best skill set, but if they've got a poor attitude and they don't sort of contribute positive energy to the team and to the environment, then they often don't get selected, because the team or the group, as we've spoken about, cricket's a team game, and the group is more important than any individual. And I love the expression, or the sort of idea that you have energy givers and energy takers, and you always want far more energy givers than energy takers. So attitude, and I, as I said, I know so many times where a good cricketer, a good athlete hasn't been selected because they've got a bad attitude. They're selfish. They complain all the time. They just suck energy out of the coach or out of the group. And no one wants to be around those sort of people. Like, as we've spoken about, life's short, and you want to spend time with people you enjoy spending time with. So I know that there's a saying that goes around the cricket circles everywhere, that there's a no dickhead policy. If people are cowboys or dickheads, they don't get selected or they get left out. So attitude is so important. It's something we can control. It's something that we can show up and behave and act in certain ways that gives energy to the group, that helps the group and doesn't sort of hinder the group. So it's something that is hugely important.
Absolutely. Let's move on to self-talk, affirmations that players say to themselves. So, Skulls, players will often have negative thoughts that creep into their head during a game. They often doubt themselves. When this happens, players will use self-talk or affirmations to get rid of those negative thoughts and doubts and replace them with positive thoughts. This helps them believe in themselves and back themselves. So, Skulls, how important, when things are tough and these doubts start to creep in, to use self-talk and affirmations during a game?
Well, look, let me just start by saying I believe that for most people, our thoughts trigger our emotions and our feelings, and that determines how we sort of play. Because if we feel tense and tight and worried and scared and anxious, we're not going to play with freedom and at our best. So what it is we all have a negative voice. We all have a negative story and negative self-talk. And we can never get rid of that. We don't just it doesn't just die and we never hear it again. But what we can do is we can train ourselves. We can teach ourselves and learn to focus our attention on stories that make us feel better or make us feel good and make us feel calm, make us feel confident and relaxed. And in that state, physically and mentally, we can play our best cricket. We can perform at our best. So it's not about replacing the thoughts. It's just about, it's sort of shifting our attention. And it might be, I say to my athletes, things like, I'm ready. I can handle anything. Let's go. I'm going to enjoy this. I love this. This is my office. This is where I belong. I'm prepared. I can't wait to play. Those sort of stories or affirmations help you feel calm and relaxed, compared to don't stuff up. What happens if you get out? What's your average going to be? What are these people thinking? Are you going to let everyone down? Those sort of things make you feel tense and worried and anxious, and they don't help you perform at your best. So self-talk and the sort of what we tell ourselves is so critical to how we feel, and then that's critical to how we play.
Absolutely. Another thing in cricket that we have to do very well is focus and concentration. It's very important, particularly for batsmen, and particularly if you want to play the long innings, you've got to concentrate. But you can't really concentrate for 6 hours in a test match. You can't do that with your mind. You have to find ways and methods to switch on and off in between balls, or switch up or switch down, as they say. So a focus and concentration is forcing your mind to pay attention to a particular thing at a particular time. So for a batsman, it's like the bowler running in, bowling the ball, watching the ball out of the hand. The bowler, he's focusing on the spot where he wants to land the ball to get the batsman out. And after a while, our minds will start to wander as well. So we need to find those methods. So Skulls, what are some of the techniques and ways that batsmen and bowlers can improve their focus and concentration during a game?
Excellent question. Well, we've got a method that we teach here at Cricket Mentoring to our batters, and we work mostly with batters, and I've called it the 4 R's. So I think that the best players are thoughtful cricketers. They think about the game and they can problem solve in the moment. So the first part of this sort of 4 R's is, after you've sort of just faced the ball, you have to reflect. You have to think about what happened and take something out of that. It might be just something really brief, something really small, but like maybe you played and missed a ball and you've got to remind yourself that it's not the wicket the cover drive on, or something like that. Okay, so a quick reflection. Then this is a really important piece to be able to bat for long periods. In 2020s or shorter formats, it's not as important, but you need to relax. You need to just let your mind just go, and you need to switch off or switch down. And that's where you might look around the ground, see who's there, look at the scoreboard, just sort of watch the game going on over in the other field, do whatever. Just let your mind be and just relax. Then as the bowler's getting close to the top of their mark, you have to start to reset your body and get back into your stance and reset yourself physically. You might go through a little checklist of, okay, grip, feet, head, and that's resetting your body. But just before you reset your body, you'll probably tie back into your reflection of, okay, remember, head still, or come on, nice and tight, let it come to you. Tie back into what you sort of thought from the reflection. And then this is probably the most important part, is as the bowler's running in, they're about a third of the way in, halfway in, you've got to refocus on the ball. And that's where you bring all your energy, all your attention, all your focus onto that ball and the bowler in that moment. And that's, as I've said, that's where your peak performance lives. That's where you'll make good decisions and you'll execute your skills to your level, to whatever level you're at, to your ability. So if you're not focused on that moment, that's where, if you're on distractions, as I've spoken about before, that's where lots and lots of mistakes happen. So that's the process we teach. It's pretty simple. 4 hours, reflect, relax, reset, refocus. Hopefully you can do that time and time again. And that allows you to stay fresh and be able to bat for long periods.
Absolutely. Just the final thing to finish off on this topic before we move on to the next one. Visualization. A lot of players visualize. I remember Matthew Hayden used to sit down on the pitch with his bat and close his eyes and visualize. And other players, go out there and shadow bat with their gloves on and just visualize what they're going to do in the game. So Skulls, what are the benefits of visualization?
Yep. Well, the brain doesn't know the difference. The brain, subconscious brain, parts of the brain sees things in pictures, and it doesn't know the difference between what it's imagined and what has happened. So if you visualize powerfully and well, and you can attach some emotion to that visualization, you can sort of trick yourself into the fact that you've actually you've done that thing when you haven't. So you can sort of visualize being like really sort of playing a certain shot or handling a certain bowler in a certain way, and the brain thinks you've done it. So when you become familiar with something, you relax and you feel more calm and confident. But if you're the more uncertainty there is, the more the level of anxiety goes up. So if you're uncertain about something, you become anxious, and that creates the tension in your body where you don't perform at your best. So visualization can allow you to feel familiar in an environment. Maybe you've never been there before, but you visualize that environment, or you visualize that bowler or that moment, and therefore you're more familiar with it. Therefore you can be more relaxed. Even though you've never been there, you've tricked your brain into thinking it's happened before.
Absolutely. So hopefully everyone watching would have benefited from Skull's knowledge and tips on the mental side. It's very important to work on the mental side. You can't skip it, because you won't be at your best and you won't have success. Everyone's got to work at it. You can't ignore it. So moving on to the next topic, Skulls, we're going to be talking about preparation. Preparation is very important in the game of cricket. With the season not starting too far away, Skulls, in Australia, players will be thinking about preparing for the season ahead. And Skulls, preparation is very important in what we do in everyday life. We've got to prepare for everything. So Skulls, why is it important for a player to prepare? And what are the implications for a player who hasn't done the preparation?
Well, look, I think it comes back to how you feel. Like if you've cheated and taken shortcuts, you're gonna understand that. You're gonna know that you're gonna have that level of anxiety because you're not ready. So I think that there's nothing better than just standing at the top of your mark or over your bat, knowing you've done whatever you can to be successful on that day. So I think it just creates a belief and a confidence in yourself that you've done it. And if you haven't done that, you can't lie to yourself. You know you haven't done it. So yeah, you might get away with it for a little while. You might be able to just fluke it or wing it, but ultimately you haven't put in the work, so you're not going to get the results.
Absolutely. So we go into training. Training is very important for players, obviously. It's where you work on your skills as a player to improve and get better. Often, Skulls, players go to a training session not using their time wisely, without any structure or anything to their session. So Skulls, what advice would you give to any player on how to go about planning a training session to get the most out of it?
I think you got to understand what you're trying to improve and work on. What are the things in your game, maybe technically, tactically, mentally? What are the things you need to work on to improve your strengths, but also develop your weaknesses as well? So, and then on the back of that, you can formulate a plan. You can say, right, I need to improve my cover drive. I need to practice like getting the size of my step a bit smaller, a bit bigger, or my shoulder, getting more side on. So then you can say, right, I'm going to do underarms for 20 minutes to work on that. And then I'm going to focus on just getting in the contest and facing the bowler and winning the contest. So I think, yeah, that like you've got to understand what you're trying to achieve and then work backwards from there and then create a plan based around what you need at the time.
Absolutely. So then we come to game day, Skulls, and all the preparation you've done and the training leading up to game day, to the match itself. It's important that you have to back yourself and trust your preparation and your training that you've done leading up to game day. So Skulls, how important is that trust in your preparation when it comes to game day to get success and good performance?
You can't. Well, if you doubt yourself or you focus on the doubts, as I said, the doubts will always be there. But if you focus on them, you're not going to perform at your best. That's just a distraction. So for me, I love the saying, train it, then trust it. So you just got to put in the work, and then on game day, you got to trust whatever level you're at. You got to trust whatever your technique is, whatever you've got. You got to try and trust it in that moment because that's all you've got. And if you sort of, it might not be good enough, but if you're doubting it, it's definitely not going to be good enough. But if you're trusting it, you're giving yourself a chance. So yeah, train it and then trust it. Something I say to all of our athletes.
Absolutely. So then we come to post-game. Now, Skulls, what you do post-game is very important for preparation heading into the next game, the next week. It's a good opportunity to reflect on the match, on what you did well and what you didn't do so well by doing a self-assessment or self-reflection. Also asking for feedback from coaches and teammates on your performance to get better. So Skulls, how important is self-reflection or self-assessment and seeking feedback after a game for players?
Look, it's, as I said in the 4Rs, like reflection is how you learn. We've got what we call an athlete development journal. On the inside of the front cover, it says experience plus reflection equals learning. And I think that you can reflect on training sessions and you can reflect on games and you can learn so much from those experiences and those moments. And that's how you can then, develop your skill set, your mindset, your understanding of the game to become a better player. So I think so many players neglect this part of their development and then they don't learn as quickly and as much as they could, and they then don't perform as well as they could. So I think it's just vital for players to become the best they can be if they have big ambition in the game.
Absolutely. So it's very important to prepare. You can't skip on preparation. It's like the mental side. You can't skip it because you won't be successful, have good performance leading into the game. So moving on to our last topic of this discussion today, Skulls, and it's in your line of expertise, mentoring and coaching. Now, Skulls, back in the old days of cricket, you didn't have a coach. You only had a physio and a manager, and that was it. There was no coaches like we have today. So players had to work out things for themselves and use their own initiative rather than someone telling them all this information. Because back in those days, cricket was still considered to be an amateur sport. It wasn't professional as it is today. So Skulls, a mentor or coach is very important in the development of a player. So Skulls, how important is the role of the mentor or coach in a cricket team? And how important is the player relationship between the mentor and coach?
Look, I think relationships are hugely important in anything in life. Like you need good relationships to be able to, and you need trust and whatever to be able to perform at your best and for any relationship to work. So the relationship side of things is really, really important. And I think you have to respect each other more than you have to like each other. You can sort of get on with it if you don't like each other, but as long as you respect each other, that can work. But I think there's definitely a place in professional sport for coaches. But also I think athletes should be trying to get their own little sort of tight-knit network and circle of people they trust that they can go back to on an individual level. Because a coach of a cricket squad usually has 25 or 30 players that they're managing, and they can't go deep with every single one all the time. So it's up to the individual to take ownership of their own development. They got to own their own development, own their own game. But yeah, there's definitely still room for coaching and feedback but at the end of the day, it's up to the player what they take on, like what information they take on, what feedback they take on, what advice they take on. And because at the end of the day, it's their career, it's your career as an individual. As I know, you don't get carried along if you're not doing well. So you've got to work out what information to take on, what to implement, and what to just sort of try and then maybe not implement. So I think it's really, really important. And ultimately, it's up to the player to figure things out. But I think coaches can help fast track things.
Absolutely. So learning and improving as a mentor and a coach is very important, Skulls. Like the players, you have to constantly improve your game and look to get better and be the best possible mentor you can be. So Skulls, how important is it to learn and improve as a mentor and coach, and seeing that you're a mentor yourself? Who do you turn to for advice?
Yeah, look, I think like in anything in life, you've got to continue to better yourself. It's the growth mindset. Whatever you're doing, you want to try and do to the best of your ability. And part of that is learning and developing yourself. So I speak to Chris Rogers, who's the coach of Victoria, former Australian opening batter. He's one of my best mates. And I speak to him on a daily basis about batting, about coaching, about technique, about anything performance related. And coaching related. So he's one of my mentors and someone I speak to a lot. Greg Shippard, the coach of the Sydney Sixers, is another mentor I speak to every now and again. He's been very generous with his knowledge and wisdom. So yeah, absolutely. You've got to, in anything in life, you just got to keep learning and developing yourself, or else you go backwards.
Absolutely. Let's move on to mentoring and coaching the players' goals. That's very important for a mentor and a coach to do. It's very important to teach the basics of the game and the fundamentals to the players, isn't it, Skulls? So how important is it for coaches to teach the fundamentals of the game to young players in particular?
Oh, well, if you don't have good fundamentals, the building falls down. I think the skill set is built on the back of good fundamentals. So it's vital. Like if you want to be successful and you want to be consistent, you have to have good fundamentals, and it starts at a young age. So it's a non-negotiable.
Absolutely. So Skulls, you did a live stream on batting techniques, and you talked about how people have different techniques and that. And people tend to criticize players for weird techniques and that. So as a coach, how do you approach advising the players on their techniques?
Look, I think it all comes back to the basics. I try and keep things simple. I think that there's enough complexity in batting. There's enough things going on with mental, tactical, technical, that I try and keep things simple and just get them being as still as possible. And we're always trying to get the bat coming through a straight line to the ball in the most efficient way. So, that's sort of my philosophy, really. Keep it simple and let them sort of have their own way, but try and follow the basic principles of batting, the basic fundamentals that ring true for anyone.
Absolutely. To finish off, Skulls, any advice that you will give to any mentor or coach starting out this season? What advice would you give them?
Look, just find your method, find your philosophy or your way of doing things that resonates with you, but you've got to put the players first. It's about them. It's not about you. I hear some horror stories and I see some horror things all the time where coaches are putting themselves first and trying to win things for them. And that's not what it's about. Coaching's about helping develop the player and the person, and create an environment where they enjoy it. Like that's the number one thing for us is you want to give lots of energy and create an environment where they want to come back. They want to be there. They want to do it. So they're the main things, and you'll find your way. You don't have to be the best technical coach. You don't have to understand the game the best. If you're creating an environment that they enjoy, and you're making it about them, I think you're on the right path.
Absolutely. Well, Skulls, it's been enjoyable, this cricket discussion day. I really enjoyed talking to you today, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And I hope everyone watching has enjoyed it as well. So Skulls, any young cricketers watching this who've got some potential and some really good signs of going to the top, where can they find you and access you with cricket mentoring?
Look, we're on all the social platforms, Instagram at Cricket Mentoring, YouTube Cricket Mentoring, our website, cricketmentoring.com, our podcast, the Cricket Mentoring Podcast. We've got all sorts of resources, designed to help aspiring cricketers learn, develop, and become the best they can be.
Well, Skulls, thank you for joining me once again. And to those watching, keep safe and bye for now.